Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 388 of the Hazmat Guys. We will be talking continuously about the exposures, what they mean to us, how we can operate with them, how we can use them to our advantage, when, where, and how.
I like it. I like it. What are you doing?
I just got back from teaching up in Massachusetts, so I literally just walked in the door. It was a great class. We did more of the metering, got some great ideas to make the class even better, more hands-on, more. I want to say well-rounded, betterer. It's betterer, and here's why it's better. And I think people are walking away with a really good sense of the meters and how they apply not only to like our operation but every part of our operation, right? I don't think as technicians we really learn where meters fit into different parts and pieces. Like we don't really sit and discuss like, okay, I have a PID, right? So where in my operation can PIDs come into play? We'll take ammonia, for example, right? Like, you know, I can use it as a source finder. I can't use it to identify and confirm, but I have another meter for that. So once I've used that meter to confirm, then my PID can bring me all the way up to 10,000 parts per million, which is like the, you know, you take one breath in and you're dead point. And right. And then when that lags off, LEL has already started to pick up. So we have this continuum of some chemicals you're going to have blind spots, but for the most part, using the meters, the technology, and their advantage and disadvantage, we kind of have this continuous spectrum of when meters can be used in what part of the operation. So that's really the basis behind the metering classes that we do is to just get the absolute most out of the meters for each of our missions, each of our goals, and just move forward that way. And the class liked it, and I think I want to try to add a little bit of tabletop type exercises. So it was good. I'm really happy with it.
Awesome.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm out in. I'm actually doing a class out in California again, and I'm hanging out in Santa Rosa, California, Sonoma County, wine country as it may be. With 36 amazing people that are hard chargers. And we are doing what they call B week out here, which is the applied chemistry. And we had one long philosophical question amongst the instructors today. And I think I'm going to throw it on the table before we get into the rest of the thing. If you if you want to skip to where we just go into one part, that's totally cool. But next week, I believe, is the Hazmat Happy Hour, which you can find on thehazmatguys.com/happy. It's going to be 1900 hours Eastern Standard Time on the fourth Thursday of every month. The next conference is going to be in New York State, which is seriously this weekend. So when this drops, I will be en route to that, along with our good friend Steve Kolarchek, who's doing ARF rescue there. And then we're going to be at Midwest in May, Cold Zone, Baltimore, and September is Mass.
Yes, I can't. No, you didn't say Plymouth. Huh. All right. Anyway, so what's the philosophical question?
Okay. So obviously when you're doing a class, you have to go. I'd like to say we're going to do multiple topics into one time, but you can't really go deep into a single topic until you start. You have to set the table.
Right.
Right. And so in this week, they've gotten their chemistry training, and now we're going to start putting the pieces together. So naturally, you're going to start correlating the chemical physical properties that they learned in depth into real world things. And a lot of that is for like, what do you do with this? Do you like meter with it? Do you like decon with it? Okay, great. So now, as you start doing and putting these concepts together, and we play, games like, what's in the bucket, where there's an unknown in the bucket, and you're going to do your 4-gas for your PID, you're going to pH it and oxygen, and you're going to get like I'm going to say a low resolution because we're starting somewhere. We can't start with like, oh, I'm going to pull out my GCMS and I'm going to pull out the run. It's like, let's crawl before we walk, before we run. And so with these basic meters, we try to have them start categorizing it. And where you want to drive that conversation is like, okay, what PPE do you wear? However, we haven't talked about PPE yet. So
Mm,
now I've I've broken the class back to, and it's a, I don't expect them to get it right, but I've broken the class back to, do you think your bunker gear will suffice? Or do you need to upgrade? You don't have to know what upgrading means, but based upon your metering, do you think the bunker gear is going to do it? What are your
okay.
thoughts on that? Do you think you can
I-
say, hey, listen, we haven't gotten to PPE yet.
100%.
You know it's coming. But in operations, they at least showed you suits.
100%. I 100%. Okay. And I know because I've done B week before, so I know exactly the conundrum that you're in. And
Yeah.
yeah, 100% we can talk about it. And you could either do a quick little tutorial on, PPE selection, or you can allow that dot to be connected later by having a discussion about the harm of the chemical that they're dealing with. So if
Right. Is it
you can,
respiratory or
right.
skin?
And then as you go into that harm, you can ask them, okay, if the harm is respiratory, how would we protect ourselves? Well, we would need SCBA. Okay. If the harm is splash protection, right? If the harm is getting on our skin, then we've identified the harm. How can we protect ourselves? They may not know A, B, C, and D, but at least they can recognize, well, I need to protect myself from the splash. Okay, great. You'll make those connections when you learn about PPE. So as long as you can bring them up to the point that they can identify the harm and the root of the harm, then when they learn PPE, those connections can be made.
Right. But all right. So even the small thing of like this week, we do toxicology. In my mind, toxicology is strongly associated with PPE selection.
Sure.
Chemical and physical properties is strongly associated to metering or monitoring or detecting whatever it is. Now, meters tell you the toxicology numbers.
Right.
However, I don't really think you should be drilling down into the weeds when you're doing metering. You can just say, hey, listen, the meter gives you numbers. We'll talk about what those numbers mean next week when we talk about PPE. Those numbers are going to trigger certain actions.
Yeah, I don't agree with you. I don't not I don't agree with you. I don't agree with how the system you're being boxed into teaching teaches. So first of all, let's just get
Yeah.
that right off the bat, right? I don't think you agree with it either. But I guess being stuck in that box and in that system, how do you make the most of it? And I agree with you. This is not a conversation that should be independent of each other, right? Learning they should be learning the first steps of each one of those subjects. And then when you loop around again, you put the next Lego piece on top of that, and then you do
Right.
all the second
Set
round
the
stuff.
table, eat the
Right.
meal. Set the
And then
table, eat the meal, and keep coming back.
yes, and keep coming back. So just recognizing off first of all that the system that you're teaching right now is not set up well.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
how do you do it? How do you go about? You just got to kind of hope that those dots are connected at the end, and when they start doing all the scenarios in the weeks to come, that's you have an instructor with them that can connect all of those dots. Understand that their that their information hasn't been properly assimilated together, and you have somebody there to be like, oh no, remember, this is a foundational piece, and then remember you learned this in C week.
Right.
Okay, now we're tying them together.
I just think I'm making a plea to all the people that have input and have the ability of, when you're designing these courses, don't just think, oh, I need to get all these pieces. Let me throw them in a bag and then shake the crap out of that bag and say, well, that's where it laid because I only had 45 minutes for this day. There is a clear and uh, what's the word? Articulated methodology to picking a specific class at a specific time in a specific order. And you have to think about this better. It has to be done better.
It has to be done better. It
Yeah.
has to be done better. Even if it was just, okay, do I need to get into the weeds on what a level A is? No, but like you said, chemical physical properties and metering is directly related to PPE selection. So how do you waste the opportunity to not allow those dots to be connected by not teaching them X, Y, and Z first?
Right. Whatever. It's it is what it is. It's just I start getting frustrated at these little things when I go teach different programs in different places, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense here. Why would you put it here? Well, that's why we always done it.
I just teach them.
That doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I just teach.
That's
No,
true.
like seriously, like I'm like, all right, well, this you'll learn more about this later, but real quick, I'm just going to give you a rundown. I'm going to give you a rundown on PPE. Okay, let's just and then I loop it in that way because honestly, I don't agree with the way it's set up. And if I feel like they need to know information, then I'm going to give them the information. And if that gets me in trouble in some point in the future, then I don't know what to tell
you. So with all that being said, let's finish up part 2
of
our exposures, where we will finish up with something. All right. So all the ones we did on the last couple of shows, I'm going to say there's a few, and you articulated that in the previous show. This set, and there are more than just this set. I don't think, as emergency service guys, we deal with these in a limited basis, if at all.
Yeah.
And these are because, yeah, I'm totally cool with that.
Right,
like it's a very limited.
Right. Well, mercury, because it's an example of an industrial chemical that gets into the home. Right. So in times and places where you have the public, like in their home, getting in contact with industrial material, that's where this stuff comes in handy. That's like the place for it.
Typically, this is for more of the industrial hygienists and more of the Department of Health, the guys that take it down to those lower levels or do public type things. Would you agree with that? I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
Absolutely. I think for the most part, I think the AEGLs are the exception to that, where they turn around and they say, okay, all these other ones are for workers and things like that, but let's talk about now the Johnny Public. And so we've pulled everything from the NIOSH and the worker and the this and the, okay, us as first responders, we get into an IDLH, we need to have a mask on, blah, blah, blah. And now they turn around and they go, okay, but what if it gets out into the public? Like, when do we allow for the public to reoccupy an area? Like, what is acceptable before we have to evacuate? What's acceptable to shelter in place? Like and that's really the next ones that we're going to be talking about is the I can never
JGL.
It's right in front of me and I still can't say it right. The AEGLs, right? Because they are literally that short term, shit's gotten out of hand and I need to make sure the public is protected. They could be exposed for 10, 15, 20 hours. What are my different numbers and what kind of harm is going to come of them so that I know what to do with them?
Okay, so let's define it then. The AGLs or AGLs, I've heard of AGLs too, are acute. Kegel. Acute exposure guideline levels, which are a series of values developed by the National Research Council to provide guidance. They're not laws. They're good ideas for the maximum concentration on a hazardous substance that can be safely tolerated by humans for a short period, typically from like 10 minutes up to 8 hours.
And if we can take that and incorporate it into a hazardous materials incident, then all of these AEGL values, they can be used as like a screening tool to evaluate the potential risks associated with the exposures of the hazardous material substance at hand. So that's why they're great for the big public when something gets out and goes beyond what our hot zone is. And these AEGL values, they're expressed in three major levels, right? You have your AEGL1, your AEGL2, and your AEGL3, with AEGL1 being the lowest concentration and AEGL3 being the highest.
Okay, so now this always confused me, but I think this kind of makes sense. Is that the main difference between the AGELs and the TWA exposure limits is that the AGEL values are designed to evaluate the acute health effects of an exposure to a hazmat substance, while the TWA are for the chronic effects of an
Yeah.
exposure over a long time.
And if you think about that, that's exactly what we're looking for if we're looking for a short-term public, right? The time-weighted average exposures are based upon the average concentration of a hazardous substance for a worker in an 8-hour workday without any kind of adverse health effects. And these are, again, they're designed to protect workers from respiratory diseases, cancer, long-term things, right? We think about cancer as being something that's chronic. We think about respiratory disease. We think about respiratory disease because you've been exposed to something over a long period of time.
Yes. And so, in contrast, the AGEL values are intended to provide guidance for the maximum concentrate of hazardous substance that can be tolerant for a short time, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, cute. AGEL work values are based on the available toxicological data and are designed to protect workers and the public from an immediate health effect of an exposure, such as respiratory irritation, nausea, or other weird like vomiting, that kind of crap.
And one is not better than the other. The TWAs are designed for something specific. The AEGLs are designed for something specific. They're both super important tools in evaluating those potential risks associated with the hazardous materials incident. So we might as well kind of break down what each one of these is.
Yep. Okay, so you got AGEL 3s, which you said that was the most badass.
That is the most severe.
Okay, so the AGEL 3s, the airborne concentration, this can be expressed in parts per million or milligrams per cubic meter, which, again, just pulling it back for a second, one is a gas or a vapor, and one is a dust or a dust. Basically, it's solid in suspension of a substance which is above the predicted, which is above the predicted general population allowability, including susceptible individuals, and they can experience life-threatening health effects or even death. So this is a big one. You pass this line,
you're done. You're done. I think this would be kind of equivalent if we opened up the ERG and looked at those evacuation distance. This is like the isolation distance. If we wanted to apply this to the public realm, we would say that the AEGL3s, that would be our no-go line for the public. Mandatory evacuation, isolated area, nobody's allowed in.
Right, but they're adding on a time component to this. They could be 10 minutes, whatever, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, whatever the hell it might be. So not only are they giving you the distance and the level, but they're giving you like the duration.
Right. So you balance everything in toxicology, right, is dose and time. So they're giving you that balance to be able to figure out, well, these people could potentially be exposed. It might take us 10 hours for us to stop this leak. Where is this going to be in 10 hours? Who's going to be affected in those 10 hours? When we drop down to the AEGL2s, right, this is the airborne concentration. Again, can be expressed in parts per million or milligrams within a cubic meter of a substance, above which is protected that the general population, including susceptible individuals. Now, when we say susceptible individuals, we're talking about the really old, the really young, and those are sick. The people that we would expect to kind of croak first if something were to happen. With these people could experience irreversible or serious, long-lasting adverse health effects or an impaired ability to escape. Again, there's time frames associated with each one of these. Like Bob said, 2 all the way to 10. I think some of them, do they go to 24 hours?
They might be. I would assume that you can just extend this out almost infinitely.
Right. So this is where we're saying at this level you're going to have something to deal with for the rest of your life, or for some reason you're going to be impaired.
Right. And then we get down to the paltry Angel ones. And this is, again, same stuff. Parts per million milligrams per cubic meter of a substance above the predicted for the general population, including susceptible individuals that could notice discomfort, irritation, asymptomatic non-sensory effects. Basically, you have eye irritation, you have skin irritation, you have the itchies, you have a cough, you have a lightweight drooling issue, and that's not predating the exposure. Um, you know, basically, once you get out to a clean area, the symptoms and the problems are transient and reversible.
Mm. And this is one of the first ones that we kind of look at in a large hazmat event, right? So if we have some kind of an event, and in that area we can identify that AEGL1 level, right? That's going to indicate to us, okay, these people, what are they going to see? They're going to see mild health effects, irritation of the eyes, the nose, the throat. This is where we might advise sheltering in place, right? Where we turn around and go, okay, the levels outside are bad, but we know it's going to be a short period of time. Stay where you are,
Mm.
stay inside, close the doors, close the windows. If you have protective equipment, you might want to put it on. But for the most part, we're trying to keep people in the area, but isolated in that area.
Right, and basically goes the same thing with the Angel twos. Like we're sitting there thinking, okay, if we're gonna hit the Angel twos, like you're gonna have to seriously weigh out the okay, can they sprint to their cars and get clear before Angel twos are passed? Because once you start stepping into Angel threes, you're talking about people who are going down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the Angel
You,
twos may be like that mandatory or suggested evacuation. Like we want to try to get
right.
them out before they have, if the Angel twos is going to prevent them from escaping or cause them some kind of long lasting harm, we want people to exit that shelter in place area in the level 1 before it gets to an imminent level 2 outside.
Right. Exactly.
So now, obviously, the level 3 is kind of what we talked about before. We're talking about comas, convulsions, deaths, immediate evacuation of the public for this area. If you are doing plume modeling and you see a possible Angels 3 in that area, that is immediate evacuation. And if you're going to guesstimate your plume or allow your plume to work out, any area that might be covered by that Angels 3 needs to be evacuated ahead of time.
All right. So I know, basically we're using this in conjunction with other information, so like weather and population density and et cetera. But like, I just kind of want to pause for a second because you might be thinking, okay, when the hell do I use these things? So if I'm looking at a scenario where I say, okay, I got to move an entire building's worth of people, right? And I say it's going to take me an hour to do it. And I can safely, based upon, let's say, some poo modeling or whatever, say they're going to be exposed to 10. Don't worry about it's just a number. I can now say, well, an hour at 10 equals an Angel 2. And I go, oh, okay. Well, there's going to be some screwed up people, but it's the
Right.
better.
Right.
But if I go, oh, shit, this is going to be an Angel 3, and people, okay, maybe it's a shelter in place. If it's an Angel 1, I can go, all right, we can make a run for the border, and I can do this. Like, so there's the time that you really think you can do this in, what your amount you're probably going to see, and it kind of gives you like what the impact is going to be for the vast majority of the civilian population. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. You'll look at these models, right? If you look at the graph, you may see the same parts per million in Angel 1, Angel 2, and Angel 3, but that's because the time frame has changed.
Times are changing.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's not just all about the parts per million. It's not all about the concentration. It's that concentration over a unit time. So what you're saying is you have to almost calculate how long it would take for people to be exposed to that, not just the parts per million.
Right. And if it's not an acceptable thing, you're going to have to bring down the concentration or do it in a shorter duration of time. Only ways to do this.
Right. And it's used, this is why the angels are used in the plume modeling, because they're
Yep.
going to estimate the potential risk associated with the hazardous material substance at the incident. So, you plug it into like your Aloha, and Jesus, I've been talking all day. My voice doesn't work. The plume modeling, then it computates all the information, all the
Hmm.
weather, the chemical and the physical properties, the prediction models, and it basically spits out this mathematical algorithm that's going to predict the dispersion of the hazardous material substance in the air.
Yep. And in plume modeling, angels can be used as a screening tool for potential risks, and even do like safe distances for emergency responders, the public, and even nearby buildings.
Yeah. And so, as you know, the plume modeling is literally going to do exactly what Bob is saying. And then we kind of plug that time in order to estimate the potential health effects of the exposure. So, what is great about this is during the incident as well, but this is a very powerful tool for emergency
Mhm.
response planning, right? Because if I have, say, I have a factory in a known area, and the only way out of that town is going to be through a road that I know 80% of the time the prevailing winds are blowing from the facility across the road, I need to be able to guesstimate how much time people is going to take people to do that evacuation route. So pre-planning with the angels and the plume modeling becomes super, super important.
Yeah, and don't. I'm going to say, yeah. I can do it in 30 minutes. You got to take into account everybody, like people in wheelchairs and people in that are conspiracy theorists and people that don't want they don't know what they're talking about. This is kind of when we talk about, and we've talked about this many times on the show before, is shelter in place versus evacuation. How do you make the determination? It's seriously in you should be leaning pretty heavily into angels because it's much it's much more of a realistic duration slash dose calculation rather than the typical worker 40-hour week 8-hour day. Doesn't scratch the itch. This
Right.
scratches the itch for those that type of discussion.
And just to say, when we're trying to calculate how long it would take for people, I'm just throwing it out right now. I would totally George Costanza the shit out of an evacuation. I would be running over old people. I'd be climbing over anybody I could to get out.
Love it.